Okay, so who has questions?
Thank you. Question about the anti-entropy theory. In a sense, it is a very old theory, and it has been a bit modified, I think, by some philosophers like Hegel, saying that you have the form, the universal, and the particular, and you have to mix the two, and the particular is maybe irregular, and so it's not, it's entropic in a sense, but not just degrading all things to the same noise. And another question for about movement and clouds in your. I've been interested by the fact that it seems to be very easy for people to drive music because you have to just to you put the hands in air above you and the sounds become higher and higher. But at least in the last movie, it seems difficult for them to find a current way to have unstable retroaction between the cloud and their movements. Of course, it's different for when the cloud is a bit more close to the form of the body. So, is there some device that could be an intermediary between these two cases? Because seeing a real body a bit cloudy is not very interesting. And seeing cloud without unstable retroaction is also a bit frustrating. So how to manage to find something between?
In fact, there are three types of clouds. One is very anthropomorphic. The first one, the cumulus, with small rounded masses which are attached to the body. And the second one, the stratus, can be very dispersed or not, and this most interesting type. And in the last movie is quite completely different. It's a zoom, so you cannot identify with, you cannot find where is your body. So there are three kinds of experiences, and it's very interesting to know where is the frontiers, or where are the boundaries, and beyond when we can say, well, it's me or it's not me, and we want to work on this.
Not just it's me or not me, but it's a form that has something to do with.
Yes, but also you have to dialogue with the matter. So you have to adjust your gestures and to be able to have different behavior. And this influence we want to investigate.
Yes, I just want to talk about as well to the air anti-entropy theory of art, because it makes me think about what physicians said sometimes about life itself. They define life as a non-equilibrium state compared to, like, for example, a cup of coffee. And a cup of coffee is dead because it reached this state of equilibrium, and then the entropy is reached or is growing. But then, like, living systems, they are defined to be like something that fight against this law, and then therefore they are like, I don't know, like art. So it's like art and life itself is an anti-entropy thing, and this is a mystery because they just fight against this law. So
yes, and I can just add to it that Michael Ben Eli, which is an architect and connected to Buckminster Fuller Institute, he also said that in a sense I sort of use art, but in a sense he pointed out that all sort of a human critical ability or critical and creative ability, this is the potential of this kind of anti-anthropic role.
Yeah, it's like creativity and life, it's the kind of the same thing, it's the same process, kind of.
Yes, that we human, we have that ability and potential to do something with it, basically, as simple as we can say.
I may comment on that. For me, art is more anti-ergodic property. So you want the art, you want the system not to be in a unique trajectory, but maybe there is multiple trajectory, and maybe it's more than disorder or order. Maybe we have to explore if there is a unique, like what I call a trajectory for that. So just to comment on that, I was willing to comment on Mr. Mu performance that I appreciate a lot, and I think there is a big issue right now that is the climate control, and all the idea about climate control is it's very to me dangerous. I'm also a climate scientist. And what is planned to do is something at much larger scale, much higher in the atmosphere, and it's not with silver iron, but it's with sulfuric acid, so something that will be something kind of dangerous and something we do not control at all. And this is to me a question that has to be thought or about by artists. And when I was doing this small layer in with ECHO, my point of view was to interpolate the people on that. We have a spaceship with no windshield. This idea that there is no protection, so if we do something, we better thought about that. And maybe one idea of art is to have a much deeper thought from a different perspective on what before doing something.
But you want to react?
I agree.
Yep.
First of all, I want to say that I really loved the work of Mr. Mu. I think it's great. But then I had a question as well. At the beginning of, you said that you wanted to do it totally legally and make a point of asking for permissions and things like that. And then you didn't manage to do that. And so you finally did it illegally. So I understand that it was a point to do it. But would you try again to get it legally?
Actually, it's a secret, but it's still in process, because I'm not showing this movie as much, especially in Canada, because they're really trying to put me in jail for that. But no, regarding the fact that I decided to do it illegally, it was about the maturity of the project and also the time. The timing was really significant for me, and also for the context. So I had to face my will of making an art gesture, and anyway, as I said, it's a matter of freedom. So I decided to do it properly.
It's a question from Mr. Mu also. A general and a particular one. I still don't know what is art and what is science. And in particular, I would ask to you, what is artistic in your approach? For me, I consider that the movie that you have projected can be also projected by Greenpeace, for example. What is your artistic art? How do you define it?
Well, first of all, I don't think that Greenpeace has such a good DOP as me. So director of photography, and no, of course, it's really written. The cinematographical retranscription is really conducted and directed. So, first of all, I really take that as and I'm asking you to appreciate that. I mean, to give your point of view on a cinematographical approach. So for that, it's much more on the art field than the scientific field. Then the inside, the inside of the movie, as you've seen, I'm alone doing that. It's like someone making his own bomb or his own drug stuff. We don't really know what is going on if we don't have the cinematographical trick of the radio explaining the context. For the French speaker, we don't really know what is going on. So I really try to work in collaboration with scientists, but every time, and it's not an image, but every time they closed me the door, I was passing through the window to ask them again if they could support me to give me information, and I managed to make that, but finally it's much more through books, internet, illegal, informal chats with scientists that I could do that. So it's not a collaborative work with scientists. I don't know if it's a scientific project regarding the fact that it's just a gesture, so I don't know, and it's a restage of already existing manipulation. So that's the two approach. I really want to underline the fact that it's a cinematographical purpose, even if the content is really clean, but.
Okay, I'll make my comment. You want to?
Just to answer to your point, to my point of view, a lot of what Greenpeace does is artistic, in the guidable sense, meaning that showing the social interactions and making obvious scenery of what is beneath the political discussion is artistic in the sense of guidables, try to define. I don't think your work is exactly that, but it could have been. I mean, if you had showed this work within the law or outside the law, this also is part of the project and could have been shown. I mean,
comment as well, but it's not just about aesthetic quality, it is also about bringing attention to something, it's a creative act, and that's, creative act can be on part of many people, well, in this case is this,
As I have the microphone, and before I give it to Roger, because I think this is interesting in this panel. We have 3 official artists and 1 official scientist, and it's very difficult to. The scientist works as an artist somehow, or in between. And Monsieur project is something important, which is an act, in French, un acte dans le réel, and which is also something which is very important at the moment in the art world, where the artistic gesture is actually no longer into the representation or the symbolic, well, includes the representation in the symbolic, but is also for real. And I think this is something important in this discussion, where also most of the panelists this morning were talking about clouds with a lot of imaginary, poetic, philosophical components. And what they do is really grounded into real things. And I think that's interesting also in the art-science relation, where the artist can go illegal when probably the scientist cannot, or how could the scientist go illegal? I would like the scientist to answer that. Okay, Roger, what was your comment?
Yeah, so I'm not quite sure how to phrase this. I'm going to talk a little bit about this afternoon, but the question of water is such a gigantic problem. So how these symbolic acts become cumulative in the sense that somehow they become a cultural value, right? And I don't know how much water we all drank. I mean, I don't know what our consumption is for this workshop. I haven't done the calculation, and you can go online and actually look at how much water we all used to get here to spend 2 days together. So I think the question really for me is how you see your individual acts of getting people to pay attention to something somehow, and it comes back to the question of entropy, right? I mean, normally culture isn't designed. The culture evolves in reaction to, and so how do you imagine that your small actions contribute to a cumulative effect in culture?
Ladies first. Could you, no, sorry, just I'm asking you to tell the last sentence once again, I didn't catch it.
Okay, so we're dealing with such a gigantic issue, right? How do you imagine your small symbolic acts contributing to a shift in culture?
Well, okay, I'll start. Well, in my installation, it was really about creating a situation in which, in a sense, symbolically speaking, everyone participating is a maker of rain. And, you know, maker of rain is, again, very symbolic, but at the same time, it can sort of point it out that we are what we make, meaning, and I think this kind of consciousness of through participatory artwork, that's what was driving force behind my thinking, you know, that to sort of not just talk about it, but through the action of doing something, perhaps the participant can reflect or can realize, you know, how much of everything is connected. So, you know, what we do has an effect, and we can all also make a change. That's important, I think, too. So maybe in my case, it's kind of the participant, and it was important for me that it wasn't just one person, but it was more than one person. So in a sense, to create this kind of collective awareness, if that's possible. So that's my little gesture.
There is a book I wrote a lot, which is in French, La responsabilité de l'artiste by Jean Clair. I don't know, artist responsibility or something. And very briefly, for those who don't know the book, Jean Clair is very kind of negative about the state of the art today, saying that the artist engagé, the involvement, the political involvement of artists went to some kind of monstrosity in the middle of the 20th century, with artists being involved into some dominating system, and that the abstraction of the end of the 20th century opened to an disengaged artist and irresponsible in some way, a kind of a god artist, which is alone, who is alone and has nothing to take into account. And it stops to this point. And I think we are coming to a new age, and kind of new century, and where that's why I put the Isabel Stenger's sentence that the interconnection, the new interconnection, the new perception we have of the interconnection of the human society on one side and human with nature on the other side, ask for some new representations. And she says that as an art of taking care, we have to be aware of, that's what you said. And I think we have to put in the circuits some new metaphors, some new representations, not to conclude any kind of topic, but just to kind of give the money for the symbolic circulation. I mean, the coins for the symbolic circulation. This is what I think.
So, as a brief answer, I will say that, first of all, in cloud installation, I can say that cloud made man, that it's a different way to understand we are. And today, in our disembodied world, and I think it's very important for the social impact to question the new relationship between what Bachelard said, the function of reality and function of irreality, and how they work together with new media and technology. And this is the reason why also that I think that when art and science are together, it's more, of course, it's more than art and science, and it's like techno-science. I mean, it's not just technique with science, but it is the impact of both on the society. So it's a different way to question human being, I think, through a very performative and a new way of thinking and being.
I see my project and my movie much more as a tutorial to do it yourself with a low-tech rain, and with a human scale you can reach clouds, the sky, yeah. With a human scale you can reach the sky. And to of course doing that, showing that with a etatic will or global will, we can fuck up everything instantly, even if I open a door doing that. But yeah, I see that as a concrete, in reality, act of do-it-yourself.
But you have security issues also. There is, you cannot launch balloons without blocking the sky, right? Because you don't want a balloon to hit a plane. So you have to take that. I mean, the tutorial is also, if anybody in the street thinks, cool, I'm going to do the same thing, then we're in trouble, right?
In the same time, there is thousands of balloons dropped and launch every day. So yeah, it's not a matter of the balloon.
But not on the plane routes, hopefully.
Yeah, but it's much more about the fact of doing it. So potentially we can do it then.
I have one question here first.
Yeah, just once on what you just said before and what somebody said is, I think that your piece is more conceptual than anything really. I mean, it's the idea that is interesting. It's the idea that you point out that that can be made, and to make it what is a real artistic point there. The fact of the film is what you make out of it. What you're going to show in a gallery or in a festival, or I don't know. But the artistic point is the actual idea of making it.
Yeah, it's the artistic gesture, ce qui fait œuvre in French. It's much more to face the landscape and to do something in the scale of the landscape with individual will, and to take to underline the disproportion and that's much more for me, which is the work. Then, of course, what I'm trying to do as much as possible in my projects is to have a conceptual issue and to raise aims going further than just the idea, the intellectual idea, and there is also an aesthetic purpose. So then it's un projet à tiroir. It's œuvre totale, merde.
But it's also political. So that's you have in mind. It's also political art, and there's lots of artists that work politically. So I mean, it points out also to the politics that goes on around water, and in this particular case between U.S. and Canada. So I mean, it has also that dimension.
About the balloons and the rain, I think sometimes is the way things are presented, because another way to look at it could be on mountains. To avoid the avalanches, people fire projectiles and they produce avalanches. Now, I've been talking with a lot of people in Portugal about this. People, until now, it seems like, a few years ago, the Madeira island was hit by huge cumulonimbus clouds, and also the Canary Islands were hit by big clouds that came, the anvil clouds, not just the shape, but the amount, the weight also very. Anyhow, it seems like to diffuse these anvil clouds before they hit islands is an area where no one has any problem with making them rain in the ocean instead of on top of the islands. So it's just a thought. And the final comment, there's an antonym, synonyms and antonyms for entropy. It's extropy or something. So there's things that we're going to exchange emails about those issues. Thanks.
Just regarding the avalanche, just to say that I'm working on different projects after that, and also following the same protocol. And I'm trying to trigger avalanche with the sound of an avalanche, so to have the tautology of the event and having the sound of an event before having the event.
Nathalie, I want to put you on the spot a little bit and push you a little bit. Because I was a little bit uncomfortable with this idea that somehow this floating between art and science actually can contribute something. and I forget who had the quote, but presumably there's also some rigor and methodology within what you're doing. So beyond the experimentation, there's a theoretical framework, there's a... So that, and at that point, there's I'm a scientist, so there's a certain rigor where you don't have total freedom to do what you might do if you're in the art sphere. So I don't think that it's as easy as floating between art and science as you indicated.
I agree with you. I didn't want to think that there is a mixing between art and science. I am not for the. I don't agree with the third culture, and as a scientist, I think I know a little what is science and can say well I am doing science, but my point of view is that during the creative process, this can be this floating, this is traveling between art and science, and after that it's also important to have products in science and products in art, artwork and articles or papers, and it's a problem of how to transfer the information to your community, and so perhaps it's because I have to precise my mind, but I agree with you. I do not fuse the mix the both. But the quotation was for the moment, perhaps a wow moment, or the beginning of a project. Then it's very interesting, and it's enrich your approach to travel, so on both sides. I don't know if it's clear.